All right, so good morning, you all. So finally, we are back after holidays, and I want to share my slides with you. So I hope you still remember this picture. This is the backbone of the modern day market system, and the idea was that you should be familiar with the demand curve and the supply curve. And you must remember that they are not static concepts. They are very dynamic, and you can see that the demand, there can be change along the demand curve. I hope you can see the cursor moving. And whenever there is a change along the demand curve, it's because of the price change, and rest all the factors are constant. But if the demand curve shifts, it goes rightward or leftward, it expands or contracts, then it's because of the non-price factors like taste, fashions, habits, etc. And the same thing happened with the supply curve. And then there is a classic example when the demand and supply, they are intersecting one another, and that's where we have the equilibrium price, and that's equilibrium quantity. And if there's any disequilibria, if there is a change, disturbance, disruption, the market system itself is capable of restoring back to the normalcy, to the equilibrium. For instance, you can see that here was the original demand and the original supply curve, and that was the price and the quantity. But if there is a demand for this product increases because the people's income has gone up, they like this product more than before, there's more people in the city, and so on and so forth. There is a better technological development, and because of these reasons, the demand curve goes rightwards. So there is a rise in the demand, and then because the supply curve is same, it doesn't change. Hence, the new equilibrium shifts, and the new price and the new quantity. The beauty of this thing is that no man-made action have engineered this change. It comes organically, it comes spontaneously. So that is the beauty of the minimum of man-made intervention is very important for the success of the market economy. And we can take all the decisions with this. I think this we discussed last time, that how we protect. When we fix the minimum price, we fix the rights of producer. And when we fix the maximum price, we fix the rights of, we take care of the rights of consumers. And in between, there is a price movement, and the price movement is allowed I think in all the democracies, in all the free market system, we can see that the demand and supply curve can move freely, but within the narrow zone, not narrow zone, but within the certain band, within the certain zone, the demand and supply can move freely. Because if the demand and supply are perfectly free, there's absolutely no constraint, then it could be possible that the price can go very high one day and very low other day. And if we are living in such a volatile situation when the price could go up and down, imagine the price of food items, bread, one day it's 60 cents and next day it's €6. So that is not a tenable, that's not a very sustainable situation for anybody. That would create all other types of problems in the economy. Therefore, the state has to mildly intervene in the economy by fixing the maximum price and fixing the minimum price. Okay, we had discussion about it. The videos are available. And then I gave the examples here also, that why the farmers in some country, they're not happy with the minimum price, they want it more, okay? And why consumers are angry because the real price, I think this example, this UNCTAD, it was in the context of COVID-19, that in many countries, because of COVID, the sellers are charging more price than the maximum permissible price. And thus, they are taking a leverage, they're taking an undue advantage of the COVID-19 situation because there is a scarcity, there's a shortage. So, yeah. And before I go to the next slide, I want to show you something that how the decisions are taken. Well, you know it already, but I just want to double check that yeah. Maybe draw. So you can see that this is the equilibrium, and I'm writing a text here. So that the message I want to give you when I draw this slide is that this picture is that we can take all the economic decisions with the help of price mechanism. I want to give you an example of, let's say, the foreign exchange, the exchange rate. Let's say we talk about the quantity of GBP, the Great Britain pound. And I think if the sign is like this, I guess. Oh no, this is euro 3. And then I want to give you one more text here. And here I want to determine the exchange rate. And let's say the exchange rate is £1, £1 equal to let's say euro 1.21. And who fixed this price, by the way? The price is fixed by the market mechanism. And you can see here that this price is fixed by the demand curve and supply curve. But the question is, what is this demand referring to? May I ask you, if you are in the foreign exchange market and you are in Finland, so we have this euro, but we want to determine the price of £1, then what would be this curve referring to? Demand curve of what? And supply curve of what? So this is the demand curve. What should I write for here? Demand curve of what? And if I have supply curve here, so what should be the supply curve of? What?
Demand will be GBP, and supply curve will be exchange rate.
When you fix the price of bread, how do you fix it?
I summarize all the commodities which were used for
only
the
price of bread. Price of bread. If I have price of bread here, what would be the demand curve and what would be supply curve of? If you want to fix the price of bread, how the price of bread is fixed in market economy? That's my question to you.
We will fix the price for that people will buy it.
Price will not cause the demand and supply. Price will be the outcome of demand and supply. Price is fixed by demand and supply. My question is that if you want to fix the price of bread, how is it fixed? Whose demand, whose supply? On the one hand, okay, there is a shop, let's say Prisma, and on the one side, the main entrance, there are customer standing outside. So they want to buy the bread. And then on the back side, where they take there is a, on the back side of the store, there is a warehouse where they put all the inventory in their warehouse, or you can say the, whatever you call it, go down, or the storage. There is supplier of bread. Can you visualize it, that on the one hand there is a customer buying who want to buy the bread, and then there is and there's a lorry which has bring all the inventory, all the goods in the store in Prisma, and that is a supply. And if there are 100 customer on a given day, so which is more than usual, let's say, usually there are 20 people coming, let's assume, and on a given day there are 100 customer going to buy the bread. But on that day, normally there's only 3 times supply of bread, but on that day there's only 1 time supply of bread. So what will happen to price of bread on that day?
It will raise.
The price will go up. So here, same thing happens for here. We have demand curve for GBP. And here we have the supply of GBP. Okay, so this is the demand for GBP. There are people in Finland who want to have pounds. Many companies, they want to buy goods from Britain and they will pay them in pounds. Many people, they're traveling to Britain to have their holidays. They want to have pounds. And then we have supply of pounds. And many investors, by the way, in Finland, they want to buy some property in Britain. So they want pounds. And same way, there are supply curve of pounds. The Finnish companies selling goods to Britain, they get money in pounds. Okay, that's supply of pounds. Some Finnish investors, they sell their property in stocks of the British companies, they get pounds. So there is a demand, and some Brits who come to Finland to enjoy holidays in Lapland. So Finns earn from them. So this is how the supply of pounds come. The demand curve and supply curve of pound. Like demand for bread, the exchange rate is also downward sloping. So if pound is expensive, let's say for 1.60, pound. On the other hand, supply of pound will be, can you hear me?
Yeah, for some time your voice was not there. Now we can hear you.
So I repeat that this is the demand curve for pound. If you are a student who want to study in Britain, if you want to have holidays in Britain, if you want to buy some products from Britain, if the price of pound is high, demand is less, because pound is expensive, and you don't demand more those things which are expensive. And then if the price of pound is cheap, low, then the demand for pound will be more. So the demand curve of pound is like demand curve for eggs or demand curve for sausages. The same way, the supply curve of pound will be upward sloping. If the pound is expensive, the price is up, then being a Finnish exporter, it's really worthwhile to sell in Britain, because then you get more money. On the other hand, if the pound is cheaper in comparison to the home currency, euro, then it's not very worthwhile to sell to Britain, because then you don't get much revenue from the same amount of sales. So this is where the equilibrium is established. And let's say that the equilibrium is £1 is equal to euro 1.21. Now what happens? There is a disturbance, and the disturbance is that suddenly demand for pound goes up. So basically there is an expansion. There is an expansion in the demand for pounds. And as a result, what will happen? The supply of pound is same, the supply curve is same, but the demand curve has shifted. Maybe there is a very, the very positive signs of British economy booming, and then people want to invest in Britain. So as a result, the demand curve shifts upwards. And as a result, what happens is that the new equilibrium will not be any longer here, but the new equilibrium would be established at this point. And as a result, what will happen? The exchange rate can go up, maybe more than 1.21. It was 1.21 before, but now it seems to be 1.4 or 1.5. And same way, if the pound supply, if the pound demand shifts downwards, there's more pessimism. Maybe after Brexit, Britain is no longer a very kind of sought after economy for the foreign investor. And as a result, the demand for pounds can go down, and the rate of exchange can go down. So whenever you see that some currency has become expensive, it could be that the demand has gone up or the supply has gone down. So there are many possibilities. So it could also happen that the pound has become expensive because the supply of pound have gone down, shrunk. So there could be both mechanisms. So when something becomes expensive than before, there are two reasons. Demand has gone up and/or supply has gone down. And if something becomes cheaper, then again, there are two possibilities. Demand has gone down and/or supply has increased. And that's why this is like a ultimate truth in the market economy, that this is how so you can determine the price of any commodity, any service, whether they are tangible, whether they are the physical products like chair, computer, furniture, or they are services like the services of a IT consultant or a financial consultant or a lawyer, or they are financial products like stocks or the foreign exchange and these kind of things. So whatever is the commodity, whatever is the service, the market equilibrium would always be, prevailing, basically. Questions, comments? So if no comment, then I move on to the slide. I wanted to show you the most glaring example of the application of the price market, the price mechanism in the reality. And that's something I want to show you. And if I have to find one example, then I think this is the best example that I can find. This one. This is the slide. I took it from Yahoo Finance. I think I showed you a few times. And this is the FTSE 100, the index. And you can see here that this is from 2015. This shows how the market in Great Britain has been going up and down for the last 5 years. Which market? The stock market, the share prices. And you can see that the stock prices have been going really bad in 2016, 17 recovery. And since 2017, there are some heads and shoulders. Sometimes there are heads and shoulder, but event overall, um, beside, apart from some minor hiccups, the British economy has been fairly stable for the last. So if you make some, so the point I want to make here is that if you see the peak of these blue curves, they all are determined by demand curve and supply curve. So if I just try to copy this picture and I want to draw like this, so if I go on, yeah. So if I draw this picture and I find that this is how the market in Britain has been going up and down, then I can see that every point is a demand curve and supply curve. Every point is a demand curve and supply curve. So I can make crosses, infinite crosses. If on a certain time the British market went down, it could be possible that the demand curve has gone down or supply curve has gone up. You can see that the supply curve from here to here shows increase, but the demand curve shows a decrease. And if the economy is at the peak, then it's because the demand curve has gone up or supply curve has gone down. So you can see that, and in the stock market, every moment, the price is changing, and every change is representing the demand curve and supply curve. So whenever you see some stock price, stock market data, or the pattern, you can see that all these points, the peak of each point is representing the demand curve and supply curve. And when the market is booming, when something is booming, it is because the demand is more than before or supply is less than before. And whenever the market is going down, for example, here you can see that from mid 2015 to the mid of 2016, it was not a very good time for British economy. Remember that that was a time when the discussion was going on about Brexit. So the stock market, so a lot of uncertainty in the British economy. So the prices, the index value was, the market value was going down. And if it is down, it means that demand is less than before and supply is more than before. So there are more seller and less consumer. Like I gave you example of Prisma, that on a given day, the price of bread will go up if there's a more demand by consumers or there's less supply of bread in the inventory of Prisma. And if the price of bread is going down, it could be that the demand of bread on that day is less consumers queuing up to buy bread, or on a given day, there is an extra supply of bread. And that's why there is a surplus, and surplus leads to lower prices, and the deficit or the shortage leads to more price. So this is the practical reality of the modern day price mechanism. I'm not sure if the market is open yet. Maybe I can try. Let me check if I can be successful. No, just a sec. So if I take you, I don't know what time it is in USA now. It's about 6 hours. So
sorry, Shab, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
What are those different colored bars in the chart, you know, above the years, you know? So I can see there are like red, green, yellow small bars. What are those representing?
You mean in this?
In the index, what you showed us from the printing market.
You mean this one here?
Oh yeah.
Oh
So
yeah, it shows that the green is showing the gain and the red is showing the loss.
okay.
So you can see that every time the economy, the market is going up. Look, for example, here, yeah. So there is an upward trend. So you see the green is getting bigger.
Yeah.
Until the stage come when it's again going down here, and then
Yeah.
come the red. And you can see here that when I took the screenshot, the market lost 0.65%. So it was a loss. So loss means red.
All right.
So whenever there is a change in the index, there is a gain or loss, and the gain is represented by the green and the loss is shown by the red.
Thank you.
No worries. I'm trying to show you something. Because when we meet tomorrow, it will be 4 o'clock, yeah? So that time, the markets will be working, at least in Eurozone, the markets will be working. But let me try if I, goodness me, what time will be in Japan now? What time would be in Japan?
About 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
The daytime, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit. Can you see my screen? Am I sharing it with you?
No, we can see the old screen that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. All right. Now I'll be sharing this screen with you. Bear with me. Because I'm trying to get you a real situation of the market mechanism. Now I can share my screen with you because I wanted to open that market which is open. So I guess it's yeah. Can you see this? Nikkei 225?
Yes.
Yes.
So it shows that there is some time gap. It's not a real time. So there is some time gap. And you can see that the last time there is a 0.55% decrease in the index in Japan. And if I go by the 1 day, so the market opened at 9 o'clock and it went up. In the beginning, the market sentiment was up, stabilize, a bit fall, again, kind of heads and shoulders. You can see a little bit rise and fall. But then since then, since 10 o'clock in the morning in Japan, the market has been showing a downward trajectory and it's really going down here. You can see that this is the last value. And this is I can draw from here to here, I can draw infinite demand curves and supply curves. So each point, each top, the peak, is representing a demand curve and supply curve. So no other example can be better than the stock market if I have to represent the actual functioning of the price market system. And this is happening now, right now, in the in the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Okay, and it's been there for a long time. I mean, normally it happened that in the more active markets like in Europe or in America, you see that this keeps changing colors, red, green, so always up and down. But this has been fairly stable, for the last couple of minutes. Okay, we move on to the new concept, unless you have any questions. So we move to the consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is a very, how to say it, is a very psychological phenomenon. It's a very behavioral part of economics and finance. And the consumer surplus is that whenever you want to go for your shopping, you have a certain intensity of what you want to buy or what you don't want to buy. And here comes the concept of marginal utility. Do you remember marginal utility? Marginal utility is the additional satisfaction which you have in your mind to obtain if you consume an additional unit of something. Okay, so that is the margin, and this is the pre-consumption concept. If you consume, then what you get is called satisfaction. So satisfaction comes in the after consumption scenario, but the utility is a before consumption or a pre-consumption phenomena. This is the value judgment. This is the value. For example, if I'm desperate to buy, I'm just waiting for the store to open and I want to buy some nice electronic pen for myself, it shows that I'm attaching a huge amount of utility. Or let's keep it simple. I have to travel today. It's a summertime and I have to drive for a long time. Sun is there, very bright straight in my eyes. I don't have my glasses. So I'm just waiting for the store to open so that I can rush and buy the glasses, some goggles. So it means that I have attached marginal utility, certain amount of marginal utility to the glasses. But after I consume it, they may be rubbish. So I may not be satisfied. So that is a post-consumption phenomenon. But what we perceive, what we bear in mind before the actual consumption is called marginal utility. So what happened here is that there is a price which you are prepared to pay, and it depends upon your marginal utility. And then there is an actual price which you pay. And both are not necessarily to be the same. For instance, a consumer thinks that if he or she consumes one additional pint of beer, his or her utility will go up to the tune of 10 euros. So it must be a very expensive country. So 10 euros. But when the price the person sees is 5 euros. So the person who is really willing to buy a pint of beer was prepared to pay 10 euros because that was the value he or she attached. That I'm so keen to drink a pint of beer that I can attach a value equal to 10 euros. But the person doesn't know the price of the beer. But when this person goes to the bar or to the store, finds out that it's actually 5 euros, it's a pleasant surprise for you. It's a pleasant surprise for you. And then what happened is that the price you willing to pay was this, but the price you actually pay is this. And this is like a saving. And this is called consumer surplus. The consumer surplus can also be negative. Then we will not call it surplus then it's like a deficit. That you are willing to pay 5 euros, but the price which you have to pay is 10 euros. So it means then this number would be negative. I can give you one more example that let's say you are going to land at Uvascula Airport. And you know that from Uvascula Airport, if you have to come to the city center, it's quite far. It's almost half an hour, a bit more maybe. And you have your flight is landing in the midnight, and you know that there'll be hardly any taxi. And if there's a taxi, even if I get a taxi, I'm willing to pay 100 euros because I'm really keen on reaching city center as soon as possible, and I can pay 100 euros, no problem. I'm prepared, okay, because I have to be in the city center, and it's a winter night in the middle of the night. And then what happened that you find out that there's one taxi there. You go and ask this fellow, and let's say there is no meter, nothing, and you just have to bargain. And the person says, hey, yes, I'm willing to take you down to the city center, and I'll charge you 60 euros. Hey, great, let's board. Let's jump in the taxi before somebody else hires the taxi. Because you are willing to pay 100 euros. Look, this willing to pay was in your mind. It's a psychological phenomenon. We always have a psychological price to something. That's why we say that, hey, I think this is very expensive. Why we say that, hey, this thing is so expensive? Because there's a mental price and then there's a real price. And if the real price is more than the mental price, then you say that, oh no, I think it's more expensive than what I think it should be. So what you were thinking to pay was 100 euros to this cab driver for his services, but what he's charging is 60 euros. And hence, in a way, you don't disclose him that, hey, I was willing to pay you 100 euros, take 100 euros. You would never say it. It means that you are technically saving 40 euros. And this saving is your consumer surplus. It could have been other way around also, that you were willing to pay 100 euros, but this guy is asking for 125 euros. Well, you can feel yourself blackmailed because you have no option. There's only one taxi. Otherwise, you have to wait at the airport for the rest of the night, and there is no bus. So eventually, you are prepared to pay 125. So in that case, your consumer surplus would be minus 25 euros. So this is a very introspective, it's a very psychological, a very behavioral phenomenon. So you are comparing the behavior with the reality. The behavior is that the psychological aspect is that you are prepared to pay 100 euros, and the reality is that the cab driver is asking for 60 euros, and what you are willing to pay is more than what he is actually asking for. And in a way, it's a bonanza. It's a good news for you. So this is a saving in a way. Questions, comments. This is the concept of consumer surplus, and it happens very often. Have you ever experienced this concept of consumer surplus? That you are willing to pay X price, but the actual price is Y. If X is more than Y, then it's good. But if X is less than Y, it's bad. Have you ever experienced?
Well, quite many times. For example, if I go in a grocery store, I plan already how much money I'm going to spend. Mm-hmm. And I intentionally calculate it upwards. So every time when I go to the store and I pay my groceries, I'm happy because I didn't end up spending more money. So it was always a little bit less. So
yeah,
I'm aiming for the surplus always.
Always. So that is very engineered surplus. You always have this conservative approach that the price, you always overestimate the price which you're willing to pay.
That's correct.
Yeah. But sometimes it happened that you go to some store, Lidl or Prisma or any other store in Uvascula, and you find that you have some X number of goods, and you find that many of these goods, there is on that day, there is a special sale, special discount.
That's true. Yeah.
Like it happened in many, very often on the dairy and the poultry products. That maybe chicken is very cheaper on that day. You go there and there's a special discount, and you buy two, you get third free, or the price is down by 35%, and so on and so forth. So that's a consumer surplus.
Oh yeah. For example, I went to the Lidl was last week, and I bought some blueberries, and those blueberries cost only like €1.50.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and normally they cost like $4.50 or something like that.
Yes,
So it was really nice surprise going there and noticing that, hey, it's only $1.50.
Yeah, so that's consumer surplus. It could have also happened that you really wanted to eat blueberries on that day. The price could have been very high. So either you don't buy it or you buy it expensive. Yeah. So this is how the consumer surplus, and this is how the consumer surplus is measured. Now here you have to be a bit careful that this is the marginal utility curve going downwards. So the quantity, so here is your consumption on the horizontal axis, and the price and the marginal utility is on the y-axis, on the vertical axis. And this is the marginal utility curve downward sloping. Now I want to ask you before I proceed further, do you think this is the right shape of this curve? Or is there something wrong with it? Seher, you can name somebody who should answer it. If they're quiet, then make them speak.
Okay, I can do it. Julius.
Where is Julius? Didn't he answer before, actually? Ah,
I'm
Julius.
here.
Oh, Julius. Why you think this curve is downwards? Is anything wrong with it?
Mm,
Remember the concept of marginal utility, that as you consume more and more and more of the additional units of the same product, then your willingness to buy it more declines.
yeah, so the consumer surplus then decreases.
So do you think this curve is fine, this line, or is it a problem?
It's quite steep, like downwards.
Well, that's a different thing. Being steep or flat is a different issue. But what about the direction?
Okay, I think it's possible because the markets are aiming to get most out of the consumers. So it's good for the companies to decrease the consumer surplus to I would say the graph is correct because the markets are aiming for that they can get that the price would go to the direction where they would get the most the consumers are willing to pay for the product.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's correct because it's natural.
Mm. All right. Thanks, Julius. Anybody else wants to contribute?
Shab, can I ask something?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that basically mean that prices are going up, right?
You mean the prices are going up?
Yeah, when the surplus is decreasing, so the prices are going up.
Well, the surplus is decreasing when the prices are going up. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But let's say this way, when I consume 1 unit, let's say this is 1 here, yeah? Then the value which I attach to this product, 1 unit is high, yeah? But if I buy 1 more, then the value I attach goes down, so much so that if I consume more, if I have 1 unit, 2nd unit, 3rd unit, 4th unit, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, I keep buying my shirts, and now my wardrobe is full. And then the additional satisfaction or the additional value which I attach to this these shirts are going down. And maybe at some stage, this MU would touch the x-axis if I extend it further. Maybe if the picture is big, it could even touch the horizontal axis or even go down. That maybe there's no room for my shirts in the wardrobe. And if I keep stuffing these shirts, maybe my wardrobe breaks actually. So I have a loss. I have to pay to the carpenter to repair it.
Can
So
I
then
still say something?
Yeah.
I was thinking there's one problem, because I would say that the graph wouldn't be like linear in the real world, because it's not going to happen like that. The surplus is always like decreasing the same amount, because markets are trial and error. It's decreasing
You're right.
price and adapting to the markets.
Yeah, the real life is never linear, to be honest. There is no linearity in the reality. The markets, more complex the phenomenon is, it's very hard to find the linear behavior. Usually it's non-linear, but because we are explaining it in the textbook form or very kind of conceptual form, so sometimes we simplify. But you are right that in reality, if you make some empirical analysis of this concept with some data and stuff, then I'm sure this curve would never be linear. But at least this linearity thing makes us to draw a conclusion that more you have something, the lesser increment you want to make it. So that's why this curve is downward sloping. So let's say that now how we measure consumer surplus is like this. So let's say you buy 5 units. Okay. Let's say you buy 5 shirts, and each shirt is costing you 50 euros. So 5 shirts multiply by 50 euros. So your total consumer expenditure is 250 euros. The question is that how much price you are willing to pay. Well, you are actually willing to pay if I use mathematics and if I bring in discussion the total area under the curve, then the total area under the curve when I buy 5 shirt is this much. So this type of, I don't know which shape is this. It's not, it's like it's not a square or a rectangle, but you can just see the cursor. That if this is my total expenditure in the blue rectangle or a square, I don't know. But how much money I was willing to pay, it depends upon the area under the demand curve. And that was from here to here to here to here. And then you see that what you are willing to pay is this much, but what you are paying is this much. Therefore, there's a cut above, and this cut above in the green is your consumer surplus. If the seller was very greedy and doesn't want to leave any consumer surplus with you, then the actual expenditure would have been this much only. So he would have extracted, squeezed all the consumer surplus left with the consumer. But the reality is that what you are willing to pay is still more than what you actually pay. And as a result, the seller allows some consumer surplus with the consumer. Yeah, make sense? So if you have to theorize the consumer surplus, and the consumer surplus definition is that the consumer surplus is the difference between the price you're willing to pay, which is this much. And how do you say this is the price you're willing to pay? Because if you want to buy this much, OQ1, 5 shirts, and this is the demand curve of shirts, then all the area under the curve, this is a mathematical property, is called your willingness. You are prepared. But when you see that the price of one shirt is 50 euros, which is below this maximum point, then your total expenditure means the price which you actually pay is 50 euros multiplied by 5. So your total expenditure is 250, represented by this purple or blue rectangle, and which is below the price or the expenditure you are prepared to make on shirts. And then this part, like the tip of the iceberg, this is your consumer surplus. Sounds okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. And here, I had a example of one practical example of consumer surplus, which I want to discuss here. I think I have opened this link somewhere. Maybe it's here. Share. Yeah, this one actually. It's a Wall Street Journal article, and it says that the U.S. workers gain from rising wages and low inflation. Look, this consumer surplus is a technical phrase, and this is only understandable by people who study economics. And since not everybody we don't use these phrases in our normal language. We still normally say with the gain, loss. So this word workers gain, when they say this gain, it basically is referring to the consumer surplus. That on the one hand, the wages of the workers in the US have gone up, and then the prices of essential goods have gone down. So what they are willing to prepare, it also depends on what they're capable of paying. And because of rising wages, your capacity to pay increases. But on the other hand, the price or the expenditure you actually spend has gone down because there's a low inflation. So therefore, you end up having this type of curve, which I showed you just now. That because of the rising wages of the American workers, their willingness or preparedness to spend have gone up. So this curve part has gone up. On the other hand, because of low inflation, their expenditure has gone down. So imagine that this P1 is P2 down. Then what happened? Then more consumer surplus is left. If this curve goes up or the curve changes its trajectory, this line, that this line goes up, or that the gap between these two geometrical shapes increases, then the consumer surplus will go up. And as this article says, that because of the more income now the American workers have, their willingness, maybe this curve is now here, their willingness or their preparedness to pay has gone up. You can visualize a shape based on this movement of cursor. Their willingness or preparedness to pay has gone up. And on the other hand, this purple part has gone down because the inflation in the US has gone down. Therefore, this gap, this cut above, this tip of the iceberg has become bigger. Basically, it means that the US workers are gaining. Gaining means, and the articles use the word gain, but if I rephrase in the technical jargons, basically it means that there is a more consumer surplus now available to the consumers in the American economy. Yeah. So can you relate this shape with the article I just showed you? And the full link is available here, so you can check by yourself. So basically, it should be, what is this? So this is the horizontal axis. This is the demand curve, or we also call it MU curve because the marginal utility curve. And this is the price you pay, and this is the price you pay, and this is the quantity. This is the price, and this is the quantity. So this shape, this is the total expenditure. Now, what happened? And this is this demand curve shows the willingness and preparedness of the workers in America. Now, what has happened in America is that because of the more income the workers get, their willingness or preparedness has increased than before. But on the other hand, the price has gone down. So earlier, their consumer surplus was this. What is that? But now the consumer surplus has gone and included this part and this part also. And this is because the gap between the willingness or the capacity and the actual price has gone up. So as a result, the consumer surplus has gone up. On the other hand, if inflation goes up and the income of the consumer goes down, then the consumer surplus would contract, would shrink, would fall. And it could be possible that there is no consumer surplus left. Having no consumer surplus is not a very good sign with the consumers, because then they have no savings. And because they have no savings, they have a fear of having no savings or less savings. And then they start cutting their consumption from these goods, even essential goods. And as a result, there is a cycle of, kind of downswing, or the market becomes more downwards when the consumer spending goes down. One very common indicator that we use in the market economy to have a check if the economic forecast is optimistic or pessimistic is depending upon the consumer consumption, the CPI, the consumer price index. If that price index is going down, it could be possible that the consumers are now going to pay less price. But if this index is going up, the consumer price index, it shows that the consumers, they have to pay more, and thus they would be left with less consumer surplus. So this is like some of these usual measures of the application or the practicality of the market mechanism. Well, I have to say nothing more for today. Seher, do you have any quiz things, or did you cover it last time?
Yeah, no, we just, I hope, did 5 questions at that day, and the remaining questions are still left, so we can continue with that.
So will it be okay if you give them a short break and continue with the questions?
Yeah, fine, perfectly fine, no problem.
Yeah.
Shams,
Yeah.
can I ask you something about this surplus?
Please go ahead.
Is there basically a equilibrium also in the surplus, because it seems like if the surplus is getting bigger and bigger, there have to be a mechanism which is rising the prices automatically, because the markets won't let basically people have the surplus all the time.
Yeah.
In my eyes, the prices are rising. So is there also a equilibrium here, which is basically trying to keep the surplus in balance automatically?
Yeah. Yes, this consumer surplus cannot increase endlessly. Try to understand this situation. Is it you who asked me this question?
Janne.
Janne. Okay, Janne. See from this point of view. The consumer surplus is increasing, let's say. Why is consumer surplus increasing? When you see this Wall Street Journal's example, it shows that the consumer's income is increasing. And then the inflation is going down, yeah? See from this point of view. This is true for a short period.
Yeah.
But in the long period, what will happen? When you are giving more wages to the consumers, to the workers, that will become a cost to the company. And when that becomes a cost to the company, and the more increased, the more wages leads to more cost, and then more cost leads to more price.
Yeah.
I hope then you can see this picture. I hope you can see it. Then this purple part will go up, will also start following.
You are still sharing the what you draw, the white part.
Okay, that's even better. Okay, I draw it again. I go by what you said. This is our price curve, or the MU, marginal utility axis, and this is our demand thing. And this is the situation. This is a demand curve. And this was the price. And so this was the total expenditure. Sorry for this bad drawing, but you get the idea, yeah? So this is the total expenditure.
Yeah.
And this was what the consumer were willing to pay. And this triangle is representing the consumer surplus. Now, what happened in America, if I go by this example, the consumer's wage has gone up. And in the short period, even the inflation has gone down. So therefore, not this is the consumer surplus, not this triangle is consumer surplus, but this whole thingy is the consumer surplus. But this will not last long, because more wages that you're paying to your workers will ultimately reflect in not other way, yeah, other way around. more wages which you're paying to your workers would eventually reflect on more prices. So more wage leads to more price. In the long period, more wage leads to more price. And ultimately, this consumer surplus will only, it could be possible that they play perfect hide and seek. And if this goes up by 5%, this also goes up by 5%. So the triangle of consumer surplus remain constant, but the only thing is changing is that they are moving the ladder next step. They're going just up basically, but the amount of consumer surplus remains same, or even it can go down if the increase in the inflation is 6% and the increase in wages is, let's say, less than 6%. So you're right that this consumer surplus is not eternal. In the short period, it could be possible that inflation is low, the wages of workers can go up, but this situation would never last forever. Eventually, increased wages will become the part of increased cost. An increase in cost would bring your consumer surplus down. Yeah.
Oh yeah. How about if the prices are higher, so the surplus will be really small? Will that situation be lasting long, or are they?
Well, it could be possible that this is your, sorry. It could be possible that you are having this situation. In theory, it's possible.
But
that
then the customer just wouldn't buy the product.
Yeah, then the whole, yeah, so it could be possible that you are basically, if this is the price and this is the quantity, so this is, so this is your total expenditure, and this is the the demand curve, but it would never happen. So in theory, the negative consumer surplus is positive, but in reality, as is it Julius who said?
Yep.
Yeah. So in reality, it would never be possible because you cannot go beyond this tipping point of this curve, because here, this is the maximum price, and here the consumption is zero. Then you stop the consumption altogether. Then there's no consumption. But it could be possible that sometimes the conditions may force you to be in a condition like I gave this example, that when you are landing in the middle of December, freezing night at the airport, and there is no taxi. So what happens is that you are willing to pay more price. You're willing to pay 100 euros, but this cab driver is charging you the more price. So then what happens is that now you can challenge me that, Shab, you just said that when this is the curve, then the consumption would be zero. Well, in that case, your demand curve is shifting upwards now. Because now the price which you, earlier the price you're willing to pay was 100, but now it has gone up to 125. So it's going up. So demand curve has gone up. And why demand goes up? Because your intensity to consume the service is increasing. You are willing to pay 100 euros, but now this guy is asking for 125, but you can't leave him. You can't say just, because otherwise you have to walk to the city. So then because of your increased intensity, you are willing to pay more price to the driver. So your willingness or preparedness goes up.
One thing came into my mind
Mhm.
About the economy we have here in Finland, because we have those collective labor agreements.
You have what? Can you say again?
Collective labor agreements, or
Collective labor agreement, yes.
So they are like agreed 1 year for 1
Before.
year normally. So it can be negative potentially if it's the agreement is wrong kind of, or it doesn't reflect the outcome of the markets, how the economy goes over the next year.
You're right.
Agreements is done really wrong. The net income is too low, and the markets are growing. Then the customer surplus is actually it can be like negative in some essential products.
You're right.
Groceries.
Yes, you're right. I can substantiate this example which you gave me. Why do we save money in the bank? There are many reasons why we save money with the bank. But one reason we save money in a bank is that we want to postpone our current consumption so that we can have more consumption in the future. So we don't spend all the money today. We think that, hey, we shall spend this money next year. So let's keep this money as a saving. And the reason you want to keep this money with the bank, not because the bank can save this money, security of the money, but you think that there'll be interest. You earn interest on it. And because the interest adds to it, so you will get more money after 1 year. Hence, you can consume more. And let's say the interest rate in Finland is 5% and you save 100 euros. So you are hoping that with 100 euros, you can buy less, but with 105 euros, you can buy more. So you're sacrificing your current consumption for the future consumption to have more future consumption. And you actually withdraw 105 euros after 1 year. But during this 1 year, the inflation has been 10%. It means that to have the today's lifestyle, you need 110 euros after 1 year, not 105 euros. But because the interest rate which banks gives you is less than the inflation rate, hence your consumer surplus has gone down, basically. In this case, your income is now down by 5%. So therefore, the consumer surplus is less than before. But just imagine a situation that the bank is offering you 5% rate of interest, and the rate of inflation is 2%. It means that your increase in the demand curve is far exceeding the expenditure you incur, and hence you are able to enjoy more consumer surplus than before. So it can work in many ways, but the basic idea of consumer surplus is that the price you are willing to pay is more than the price you actually end up paying. So this psychological price, this price which is your intuitive price, we call it, is in your intuition, is more than the price which you end up paying in reality. It happens sometimes you go to the restaurant there, sometimes you go to a very posh restaurant and you think that, oh, I think it'll be very expensive, but when you get the menu, you say, oh no, I think it's quite reasonable. I think I can handle it. So there are so many examples which you can relate with the consumer surplus. Okay, so we can have more discussion about it tomorrow, day after, if you want. And actually, we can even have the quiz on Wednesday. So no, Thursday, yeah. So basically, we are done for today, unless you have any questions to ask. I like this example of this collective agreement. Yeah, because that can also shows that if the wage rate determined is in line with the price increase. All right, so if there's no questions, then we are done.
I hope.
Or should I ask you questions actually? Should I quiz you?
Shiny is asking that what is the opposite of the consumer surplus?
Well, normally in the theory, in the books, you will not see the word consumer deficiency or consumer shortage. We can say that the consumer surplus is negative. So there can be negative consumer surplus. This seems a bit contradictory, that why would you call it surplus if it is negative? But because we don't have any substitute word for surplus, for the consumer surplus in the textbooks. Shiny?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so that's why we don't say consumer deficiency. We still say consumer surplus is negative, because otherwise, you know what, if you use different word for positive and negative value, then there'll be confusion that they are two different concepts. So we keep the same concept, the same phrase, but we explain in the positive scenario as well as in the negative scenario. Even though it's a bit contradictory, it seems a bit awkward to the common sense that why would you call it surplus if it is negative? But then if we use this consumer deficiency word, then the reader may believe that these two are different concepts, which we don't want them to believe. After all, it's the same concept. Yeah. So, okay, so in that case, we will be meeting on Thursday in the classroom, and we shall carry on more advanced discussion about the price mechanism. I want to keep you on price mechanism at least one more time, because this topic is so important. So then we shall be meeting on Thursday, and till then, have a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Shah.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.
And shall we have class at 1 today?
We have class at 1 o'clock, yeah.
Okay.
We shall be meeting then, yeah? Okay?
Yes, definitely.
All right. See you then.
Okay, see you then. Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.